Ghana Cedi was the world's best performing currency in the second quarter of 2025. Now in the third quarter, the story has changed. The same agency that gave it that tag is saying that, well, you are now the worst performing currency in the world. We are asking a very simple question here tonight on Beyond the Numbers, that the current performance of the cedi in terms of it being the worst performing currency in the third quarter, the question is, has the Bank of Ghana lost control? Because the governor actually gave us an assurance that what we are witnessing is a short blip, or it's a blip. We've been analyzing, things around the cedi since last week, and we've been giving you the background stories. Tonight, we are asking whether the Bank of Ghana has lost control. How will the cedi fare in the next quarter, and how will it end the year? Stay with us as we go to the Smart One. Winston, we start with the good news that came in the second quarter. And I remember the president in Singapore and Japan, when he began to speak to investors to convince them to invest in Ghana, he kept telling them that, well, in fact, Bloomberg is saying that we are the world's best performing currency. But currently, if you go on social media, many are saying that, well, don't give us this tag because we are not. But unfortunately, if you use the same assessment, the same metrics that Bloomberg used in the second quarter, it simply means that our currency is the worst performing in the third quarter of 2025. Is it something that you have been predicting, or you saw it coming, especially looking at the historical journey of the cedi so far?
Biblically, I always say the first shall be the last, and the last shall be the first. And what we're seeing here is a perfect demonstration of how, when we politicize economic numbers, especially when it's critical for business community, the outcome is what we see here. Although there's a need for us to champion investment as a country, which the president was doing, but the numbers also has to do with work on the grounds. So the fundamentals are the key challenge. Initially, in the first quarter, we saw the cedi appreciating. There were a bit of some kind of uncertainty getting into the year because we weren't sure how the management of the central bank is going to enact its policy that would ensure those gains that were experienced will be quite viable. But we saw them happening. We saw the cedi appreciating consistently week by week. People were quite hysterical whether it would reach 5 Ghana cedis. They kept asking. It was good for some markets, bad for others who were into the forex trade, who were making profit from margins consistently. The black market became a bit subtle because we weren't sure how, or the trick under the sleeves of the central bank. We saw the drop from March 2025. It was a bit stable between March and May, and we saw the drop consistently where the World Bank came in, which will come down shortly, and that spiraled. The stability has been long. From May to somewhere in August, we saw the mild stability, and that was the cry by the Bankers Association, by GUTA, by Association of Ghana Industries. They were demanding that this stability is their main concerns because of, first, pricing, and secondly, import. And when it comes to keeping the import sector, especially the dollar component that it inculcates in importation of goods, and this reflects in the most of the materials that people need to ensure manufacturing are sustained. So we saw the seasonal predictions which we made 3 months ago. It is happening now. We question whether it can be sustained. We saw more calls for the central bank to ensure that these margins, although they insisted that there were no payment being made, but we saw the last 2 weeks when people hit the street asking for contractors to be paid, the road contractors nationwide. These were a key component. The finance minister said these are something that are done irrespective, but already money is moving, expenditures in capital projects are moving on, and that certainly we've seen this blip.
Well, in fact, I think the blip is important because the governor's assurance is that this is just a blip, and so hold your horses. We will correct this soon. But I think the big question tonight is whether the Bank of Ghana has lost control. And to lose control simply means that you were the one controlling before, whatever we are seeing currently. And per the data that we are seeing, it looks like, if you look at the external factors, 2 factors must come together to keep the cedi very stable. The first side has to come from the external side, where on the external side, we need some form of stability for the cedi to also get that respite. In the local space as well, we also need to do certain things that will make the supply of dollars available. What do we do in the local space, right? Get, the forex inflows from your cocoa, from your gold, from your oil, from your remittances, and other things, right? Then the external side, you pray and hope that things will be very stable. Nothing will happen to the crude oil market that will cause prices to go up, that will affect the dollar's index for it to also affect your currency. Currently, what we are saying is that there is that stability on the external side, and it's favoring us right now. The only thing that is not so good is that if you do the assessment, you see that the current blip we are experiencing is more internal, right? Where although the external shocks are favorable, the external side is very favorable. Even if you look at the IMF program and what they said favorable external conditions. But if you come internally, there were certain things that the Bank of Ghana began to do. When we began the year, and many were asking whether the BoG could go ahead to maintain the intervention it was doing in terms of coming into the market to supply the dollars, whether through auctions or certain bilateral arrangement and all of that. But we got a response from the governor who said that, well, we have an obligation. And the obligation or the tax is that, well, the IMF is maybe worried, but they don't want you to burn your reserves to keep the cedi afloat. And already we are building more reserves than we expected to do. So if we are intervening in the market, what's the sin? And then we saw the IMF coming through with that, review report, which said that, well, Bank of Ghana, you are seeing stability, in the cedi, but significantly that is coming from the footprints of the BoG in the market. And so what we saw was that the IMF decided now to have some policy arrangements with the Bank of Ghana.
Yes.
What was the motive? The motive was that you need to reduce the number of times, the magnitude of injections. And the cedi has been so used to injections to the extent that even the stability we definitely see in the first quarter, or sometimes uncertainty in the first quarter, usually stabilized by the injections we do in the last quarter. So if you look at this, for instance, this is the last month, you can see that the story hasn't really been good for the cedi, where it is falling significantly against the dollar, and we understand that in the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks, it has depreciated by some 13%. That is making it the worst performing currency. But what we also know, Winston, is that there is some historical pattern that explains the behavior of the cedi. And that is that if you look at the first quarter of every year, that's January to March, that is when the cedi gets, some sort of uncertainty because we are beginning the year, nobody knows what is going to happen. So there are uncertainties, people begin to put their assets in dollars and all of that. Then when you come to the second quarter, that is when you get that sort of stability, because at the end of the first quarter, things will look, there will be some sort of clarity and certainty. People will decide where they want to go, the direction they want to go. The city gets some, stability. But you have a different story to tell when it comes to the third and fourth quarter. What do we experience, and why are we even experiencing the kind of depreciation the city is having, currently?
When this happens, one question people ask is, what is the impact on my life? What am I doing, especially now that the city is depreciating? Just yesterday, I was making some brief analysis, observation of the market. People who are online, who do online transactions, one of the key components is they do dollar transactions. And you and I understand a time came when the governor gave the assurance that it is high time people will sell their goods in Ghana cedis instead of dollar. So he was against dollarization of the economy. And that became a key component because he gave the assurance to the market, to the business communities. He met them even at the Bank of Ghana office. We saw AGI, he met with AGI, he met with Guta, and gave them the assurance that we at our part will do our assurance. You on the market, make sure the prices reflect. They indicated the real estate sector should ensure they also bring their prices in cedi, and certainly there was going to be an enforcement to that effect. So the central bank gave that assurance. Without going forward, it was quite prominent that this stability reflects just this few depreciation, the market has begun to react, especially those who buy goods consistently. They've already sent their way bill. They've already made their contract in previous currency.
That usually happens in the third quarter where we see the pressure, right?
People have signed contract, used the previous forex rate, and therefore this 13% depreciation margin is a bit uncertain. Many are decrying, saying they can't go back and renegotiate because they've already signed contract with, which has concluded. Now there's the need to review. They are looking into the season, year of return, or any possible festive season. People in the diaspora are going to come to the country with more forex. Is to be expected in the fourth quarter. But in the third quarter, it's all about business transactions, goods and services coming in through expert execution of contract. We've seen most contractors have been sent to site that begin work with release of funds. And you and I could attest that just yesterday on my Joy SMS, that Super Morning Show, you spoke to the road minister. He reiterated the amount of dollars. He mentioned the road in dollars. So you keep asking, why are we still naming, or let's say, valuing projects in dollar terms instead of Cedi? And this tells you the kind of impression that is still on the market. It will take time for the governor or the central bank to possibly take away that tag. And these pressures are to be expected. We're hoping that possibly there will be an intervention soon, but the central bank still, regulations still in effect. Businesses you can't take more than 10,000 Ghana cedis out of the economy without filing and knowing where it came from, and
documentation and all of that.
You can't withdraw more than 10,000 Ghana cedis your dollar in your own domestic bank account with that corresponding dollar deposit in your account. So all these regulations kind of put the system in checks, but it will take time. And all these are systems. So I believe the directives, enforcement, and the subsequent enforcement which has led to, which will come to shortly, especially the remittances, these are reactions to the market, and I'm sure we'll come to that.
But talking about intervention, many are saying that, well, if you look at the last quarter of the year, that is when the lifeline comes in, because the central bank usually will intervene more in the last quarter. You see people coming from outside, from other parts of the world to come and celebrate in the festive season in Ghana and all of that. They bring in forex. So the economy, although gets heated in the fourth quarter, there's more inflows. Demand will meet supply, and that will balance things out. And many are saying that, well, as a result of that, we may be seeing this pressure, but many are also projecting that maybe the city might not return to the levels of the 15s and the 16s. And there are also analysts who are also saying that, well, the Bank of Ghana is watching. And the reason why it is watching is that if you look at what the president said, the president says that he has spoken to the finance minister. He's spoken to the governor. When the city started appreciating the president himself, I'm sure he was a bit surprised. So he was looking for answers where it will settle. So when he was doing that presentation in June 2025, he said, well, myself, I've spoken to the governor, I've spoken to the finance minister, and they have told me that the natural level of the city is between 10 and 12, right? And that's where they're going to stabilize it. But now we know that today the city might close in terms of the interbank somewhere around 11 cedi 95 pesos. I know that Bloomberg opened trading today around 12 cedis and 5 pesos. Definitely, if Bloomberg closes beyond 12 cedis, Bank of Ghana by Monday is expected maybe to quote around 12 cedis. And we all know if Bank of Ghana decides to quote 12 cedis on Monday, which I'm not sure, but if you look at the trajectory, and now Bank of Ghana's rate, the interbank rate follows Bloomberg's previous day closing rate, you will have the indication that if we end about 12 today, we might be compelled, the Bank of Ghana might be compelled to quote 12 on Monday.
If you don't forget, something happened during the appreciation.
Yeah.
The speed of appreciation that happened up to around 10 something, you saw the speed. Within a week, the rate of appreciation was enormous.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised.
I remember it was moving in a discreet, manner.
When we wake up, you buy food at 1 p.m. By 4 p.m., they see that appreciating. You go like, what is happening? You saw the speed of depreciation just last week. We predicted, we sent out our flyers for beyond the numbers, and people were commenting saying that we are people of doom. Sometimes we assess the market. Yes, doom. We are prophecies of doom. So certainly, these are certain things that happen in the market, and we assess that indeed this is to be expected. This rate of appreciation is also happening, depreciation is also happening. But the key question is, what control? Is it losing control? Is it in the driving seat? Is Atto still forcing, or the force has come down? These are the key questions we are still asking here on Beyond the Numbers.
But I think it's important for our viewers to understand that
yes,
the Cedi this year has gone through a lot, right, in terms of the appreciation and depreciation. Let's look at the numbers, for instance, for you to understand. This year, the best level that the Cedi has gotten to in terms of appreciation is somewhere around 10 cedis, 25 pesos, and it came in June 2025. So the best time the Cedi got one of the best rates was June 2025. This, what you see in blue was the interbank rate, and what you see in red is the black market, or what many say the commercial rate or whatever. That was 11 cedi 95 pesos per checks. Yes. And if you go to, the period that it got its worst, performance was in February of 2025.
Yeah.
15 cedis, 55 pesos was Bank of Ghana's rate. And if you go to a butchie or the black market or on the street, you could get somewhere around 16 cedis, 65 pesos, and usually the difference around 1 cedi, 85 pesos, and 2 cedis. This is, the status of the Cedi. And you compare it to where we are currently. And many are saying that, well, we may be having depreciation,
yes,
but we are not at the worst level yet, Winston. What do you have to say about this? Do you think that maybe it's just a matter of time? And it depends on how fast maybe the Bank of Ghana comes in again to do the intervention. And the big question is whether their hands have been tied in terms of how much they can come into the market to do the intervention. We will analyze that. But what do you have to say on this graph that we are seeing? Looking at the best performance of the Cedi, the worst performance this year, and the current outlook.
To buyers, there has always been this phrase that goes that the Bank of Ghana has the rates, but BoG has the dollars. This has been a very interesting dynamics.
Yeah.
We shouldn't underestimate the relevance of the black market. When you go to the black market, you want to make exchange. They will not ask you bring any documentation. Easy, bring cash, collect. If you get there, once they do the signal, boss, you go change, they'll give it to you sharp. And the ease of doing business is one very critical. Although the central bank wants to set the regulations straight to ensure there are no flouting of the central bank directives and the rules of engagement to ensure the financial systems, all of them are in sync, that no one is outplaying or outsmarting the system, which is quite critical. That is why we need to have legitimate transactions and businesses which came about, which will come to the remittance space as well. So this is the reality of what we are facing. We are hoping that these challenges certainly will get to its worst, but we're praying that whatever strategy the central bank governor may have under the sleeves, we'd like to see them unfold. Although the auctions happened last week, but today you had some George still saying that although the Cedi is depreciating, it is still better than the previous.
Well, you said DSTV will still be forced to reduce prices by 30%, right?
For him, he's still insisting on the reduction.
Yeah.
And this that we are seeing here, we shouldn't forget, even when the Cedi was appreciating then, we still saw increment in utility tariff. And that was something that was happened. The water, light also went up because the dollar plays a key component in the calculation. Let's not forget the new window for prices is likely to go up by 8% because of the depreciation of the Cedi. And that is the projection we are making here on Beyond the Numbers, because the dollar plays a key role. We've already seen crude oil and other components in the calculation already going up marginally.
Yeah.
So we are anticipating that there's likely to be a plus or minus 8% in terms of output or increment in fuel prices. Some OMCs have kept their prices stable. We are likely to see some adjustment. That is next week, 16th of September. That is what we expect. So this depreciation will have its ripple effect on commodities, on prices, and possibly adjustment in.
Well, I think there's one structural problem that the Bank of Ghana is trying to solve, and I like the fact that they are coming out with reforms and measures. Suspending people's licenses and all of that. That's very, very good, because the structural problems we have currently makes it so difficult for the Bank of Ghana to do strategic intervention. It's like coming into the market there's nothing wrong with Bank of Ghana coming into the market to support. But when you keep pouring water in a basket, what happens? Everything goes down the drain. And people collect it, beneath the basket, and then they use that to speculate. That has always been the Bank of Ghana's, biggest headache, how to go ahead with that. But in fact, many have also said that, well, this is how the cedi behave when we get to the dying embers of the third quarter. But if you look at the story since 2021 to 2025, how the cedi has depreciated between August 1st and September 5th. Yeah. This is important because of the 13% or 12% we are seeing currently. You can see that obviously what is happening now is an outlier. That is why Bloomberg will tag you and say that you are currently the worst performing currency in the third quarter, because if you look at between 1st August and September 5th, 2021, the cedi depreciated by just about 1%. Then 7.65%, 0.15%. Then just last year, within this same period, although the cedi depreciated, but it was just around 2.42%. Now you move from 2.42%, now talking about, many are even quoting 13%, but if you use the official rate, it will give you 12.13%.
Yeah.
That is a complete outlier, and definitely the reason why you're seeing that level of pressure on the cedi. But you can't also do away with the IMF warning and the IMF's policy that, well, we know you are intervening, and that's the reason why you are seeing appreciation. But we want you to have that as a structural benchmark. We want you to reduce your intervention. Let's have a policy around this. And that for many has been that condition that has tied the hands of the Bank of Ghana at the moment. And many are saying, well, it could be that the IMF is behind the depreciation we are seeing currently. But the Bank of Ghana doesn't have any other alternative but to follow the program's directive, which is to reduce its intervention. If you leave it to the governor, I'm sure he would love to come and save the cedi at every point in time, especially when they feel that they have the money to do so, because Gold Board is bringing you, cocoa is coming in, remittance, although has reduced, is coming in. But do you feel that the current condition and the current policy that is expected to start this month is the reason why we are seeing this current level of depreciation, and why many have said that the Bank of Ghana has lost control?
Anything new, especially in its initial stages, the system will jack a bit before it gets to a rhythm where they understand the flow. The central bank will consistently have to monitor, give instructions to certain policies that have been violated. And most of these remittance companies that were hit consistently were warned. Some even had flouted certain regulations twice in the system. We saw, and these are big remittance companies, and their operations go nationwide, both in UK, USA, Asia, and they, in this period, people who pay fees need those platforms to send monies to their institutions. And you realize that although the central bank will say need those monies, but the law is the law, and ensuring that they kept it as how it is. And so it became very important.
Even in finance, the law is the law.
Even in finance,
right?
The law is the law.
Yeah,
because if you tend to be fair with certain players and keep others at bay, it will ensure that others will also find their own way and make it appear legitimate.
Well, multiple currency practice definitely is not good for the Bank of Ghana. But
absolutely,
if you look at Winston, beyond the fact that the BoG may not be intervening more currently, you also see our import bills in $1 billion. You can see just the first half of the year. If you track this between 2022 and 2025, what do you see? Why is that in red? And why does that even matter, Winston?
And it's interesting, 2022, we are around 7.4, 2023, 6.5 billion, and 2024, which were quite impressed. But so if you look at the figure between 2024 and 2022, our worst was in 2023. But as of now, we are doing so tremendously in terms of our import bill. And this,
I think this is import bill, so it should rather have an impact on the city. So
absolutely,
this is not good.
I mean,
if you look at the kind of pressure it will have on the city, 8.2 billion means that whatever you are getting as inflows, you are spending some 8.2 billion to import.
Absolutely.
And we understand that even in the third quarter, just like you said, that this is where importers will bring in goods. that would definitely mean that is going to affect your import bill. But also, if you look at remittance inflows in the first half, what you see is that although you are seeing it going up, right, from 3.6 billion, dollars to 3.9 billion. Maybe when you look at it on the nominal terms, you might say that, well, we should be doing well. But let me show you the growth rate. If you look at the growth rate, which is in the next slide, it will tell you how we are slowing down even in terms of the growth of the remittance, because many have said that, well, now the city is not, when it was appreciating, many said that it wasn't doing so well. So even if I bring in $1,000, it wasn't really making sense. So people stopped bringing in. And we also was going on in the remittance space, people collecting the remittance and not accounting for it. All of those things, affected. So definitely, you see how remittances grew. In the first half of 2025, we grew in terms of the inflows by 44%. Now in 2025, we're just talking about 8.3%. It means that Bank of Ghana will not have more dollars to do the supply, and could be one of the reasons why the IMF may be worried. But if you ask us if the Bank of Ghana has lost control, we've also shown you certain factors that are currently affecting the Bank of Ghana. The fact that import bill has gone up, remittance no longer bringing in, government has paid, contractors, domestic debt exchange, coupon payments have been done both on the cocoa bill side and government bond side. All of this money, have you asked yourself, what would they use the money for when T-bill rates are going down? If they have this money, would they go and chase up the dollars and all of that? That is also another significant, question that we need to bring answers to. But so far, what you see is that remittance inflows, in terms of its growth rate, hasn't really been that good. If you compare first half, first year data, first half of the year data from between 2021 and 2022, Winston.
These are amazing numbers. We've made the pictures quite clear to our viewers who watched us today on Beyond the Numbers. The judgment is still on the market. Observing the market until next week to see where does dollar go reach, or whether it will park by the roadside or still be on the highway. My name is Winston Taki, and I do this with
Isaac Kofi.
See you next week.